3, 2, 1. How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. It's Ash on Comics. I'm Ash. I hope everyone had a really good Thanksgiving holiday. I wanted to speak to it more on my Ash Wednesday show, and I ended up just kind of sketching past it. But I hope you got to spend time with family, got time to be reflectful. Is that a word, reflectful? Time to reflect on your life, the blessings that you have in your life. Sometimes it's easy to focus on the bad and not realize the good you have, to value your family members. Sometimes it's easy to take them for granted because, you know, they're always there, but they might not always be there. And not everyone has family. And so if you do, you're blessed, and cherish them because one day all good things come to an end. And anyways, I'm not going to get morbid. Just want you to remember on what's important in life. And I hope you had a really good dinner and meal. I love Thanksgiving dinner. I just got to have one. I think I had some of the best mashed potatoes I've ever had in my life. They were so fantastic. So I was blessed to have that meal, and I was very thankful to be invited to that dinner and spend some time with some friends. And yeah, so let's talk about comics. Today's comic, I deliberated in the comic book store long and hard of whether I was even going to pick this up. It is not, how do I say, it's not a secret that I'm less than impressed with the Dawn of X. Now, I kind of predicted this when I saw the lineups, what was coming down the pike and everything. I was like, oh. And yeah, but I did not expect to be disappointed in the Hickman books. And that's some of the ones I'm most disappointed in, surprisingly. And X-Force wasn't a bad book. X-Force is the book that I want most to like because it has the character lineup that I like most. It's the book that feels most like, or at least is pitched to be the most like what an X-Men book should be. The actual X-Men book itself feels kind of without purpose or direction. It's just sort of like, here's a place where we're just going to tell some one-off stories of random characters that we throw in. There's no real direction. So X-Force is like, okay, this is the book. Hopefully I'll get it. And Wolverine has been the character that's been the most true to the X-Men I remember and the X-Men I like and the X-Men I want to see. I've had some theories about that maybe, you know, all the X-Men are pod people and Wolverine is sort of instinctually seeing through this facade without actually understanding yet. He hasn't put two and two together. I hope there's some legitimacy to that theory because I can't stand the pod people X-Men. But I saw this cover and I was like, oh boy, this is not a good cover. I hate the Quentin Quire character, by the way. He's a complete asshole degenerate. He's not likable, and I kind of just want to see him get gutted by Wolverine. And this comic doesn't change that. So we start off with Magneto. If only I had been here, I could have stopped the bullet. If only you were made of metal, I might put you back together. If only, old friend. And he puts Cerebro back together. And it's a pretty cool sequence. I really liked how this started off. And then we get a full page splash. And we see all the X-Men that we know. This is the first time I remember seeing Strong Guy. I don't know if he's been shown before, but I don't recall seeing him. A few weird things. Apocalypse sitting there looking all down. That doesn't seem like the Apocalypse I know. But, you know, and so he's just kind of lying there. They put a blanket over the body. It's pretty, wow, it's kind of surprising. Anyways, this was your plan, your island, your future, and so it will remain as long as you return to us. Long live the king. Mutants around the world are flocking to the island nation of Krakoa for safety. Blah, 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 blah. They keep repeating this. Here are the characters that will appear in today's episode. Okay. Here's the 2-page spread for a small little thing of credits. Very self-indulgent. I wouldn't want to imagine what might happen without you. You don't have to. He knew this would happen. We knew this could happen. That doesn't make seeing him down there any easier. But there's a backup system in place. We have to trust that it will work. I think I can fix this. I think I can bring him back. You think? You will. You must. I will. That's what I meant. You do understand, Miss Gray, that we won't be able to hide what's happened here for long. A terrible clock is ticking. And if Charles was wrong, and if you're wrong, if the resurrection doesn't work, I understand perfectly well what's at stake. So then they're reflecting on Charles Xavier and why he traveled without an escort and all this stuff, and it's blah, blah, blah. He didn't want to act like a king, even though he wore the crown. And we got a backup Cerebro, which seems kind of smart. Only one can be active at a time. That seems plausible, makes sense. But for whatever reason, Charles Xavier didn't leave instructions on how to activate. That's the part I'm having a little bit tough time chewing. This future, as outlined in House of X and Powers of X, this is so crucial to the future of mutants, that they get everything right. I wouldn't think that they would leave things to chance, like Charles being assassinated, which he easily could do. If he's going to walk around in public, it always made sense to me, because I was like, well, what does Charles really have to fear? If he gets assassinated, they can just bring him back. But now what this book is showing me is, well, they aren't sure they can bring him back. They think. So what that tells me is they didn't have a plan in place. Charles didn't have a backup person that's like, hey, look, Jean, if something happens to me, here's what you do, you know? And that seems a little implausible. But for the sake of the story, oh boy, another white page. Now, unlike a lot of these other books we've been reading, this white page has a ton of information that's relevant to the story. I feel it's heavy on the exposition. That's what these white pages are for, actually, is to be exposition. I worry that this is going to become a crutch. You know, comics are a visual medium. Fiction, in general, has always been a show, don't tell philosophy on storytelling. And you can do that even without visual storytelling. You can show with words through description. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that. But comics being a visual, you should just show the story. I don't want to get into explaining what that means if you don't know right now, because my videos tend to be super long anyways, and I'll get sidetracked and into the weeds. So they've got these assassins on autopsy tables, and they're dissecting them. And they're discovering that they're modified humans, and they're comparing them to the Reavers, and they're trying to figure out who sent them, but they don't know. And Wolverine is going to go on a hunt. And we get some cool scenes here. I really like this panel. You know, Wolverine's talking to, is it Dr. Reyes? I don't, or which character is this? Some of these characters I'm not as familiar with. If she's dead and they get Cerebro back online, kickstart her resurrection so we can debrief her final memories. He's talking about Domino he's going to go look for. And he's like, if she's dead, why don't you tell Jean yourself? Because I'm going hunting. Snicked. And that's a pretty cool little sequence here. So Wolverine then goes to the airport in Seoul where the plane came out of. And I thought this was a little bit hokey. He beats up the guards when you see him on the ground. And we get this next panel where he's on the computer. And I just felt this was kind of out of character. Stupid bleeping computer. Stupid bleeping security software. And it's like, oh, look at this fingers. Oh, the hunt and peck. Look, this is one of my pet peeves as a big fan of Wolverine. And one of the reasons I can't say that he's like my favorite character anymore, because so many people seem, in my opinion, to get the character wrong, and they make him this kind of mindless berserker maniac, when in truth, Wolverine is a highly trained special operative who's been alive for at least 100 years. Wolverine is very intelligent. He may not be an expert on, any particular sciences or things of that nature, but, when he went through the Weapon X program, he worked as, an operative with the CIA, all these background stories, things. He wasn't because he was a dunce and was like, oh, no, this guy would be able to do basic things, and he should be reflected that way, that he's got street smarts. He's really strong common sense and savvy, but here he's just kind of like stupid piece. And it just came off weird. And then one of the guards comes walking in. Wolverine's ready for him. And then we get this really bad example of sequential art. Look at the frame on the left. Wolverine's darting off his chair. The chair is falling. It's a good frame. And the security guard's shocked. He's startled. It's all well laid out. This is perfectly fine. Then you jump to the next frame. One of the goals when you're telling a sequential, when you're a sequential artist, is you are trying to establish movement on still images through the sequence. What I mean by that is from frame 1 to frame 2, the reader, the viewer, should be able to look at those frames and visually imagine the motion and the, almost like animation, if you will, in their head of how things played out in between the two pictures. Now, a good artist who's good at this and will get you to read a book, and you, as you're reading, you'll start having you'll start imagining it animated. It should animate in your mind. Now, most artists, especially today in these day and age, aren't good at that. Most artists get jobs because they can draw just pretty pictures. They get jobs based on one single frame, like, oh, look, you can draw a body. It looks good. But sequential art is way more than that. Now, if you are a really great illustrator, a lot of times that will get you by. The storytelling doesn't have to be strong because people just enjoy looking at the drawings. But as you get used to it, as you start getting more accustomed, and as you start understanding sequential art, and you start being more you start being more consciously aware of sequential art. This happened to me when I was young, and my stepfather, who was an artist and everything, he taught me about it. Once he kind of opened my mind, and I couldn't not see it anymore. And so now it becomes a big pet peeve. So look at this frame A and frame B here. The frame on the right, I don't understand how we got to this. Wolverine is his right arm is kind of already swung past, so it's almost coming across the left side of his body. He's already leaning forward. On the next frame, his arm is completely cocked back, and it's almost like a reversal pose. His left arm is now kind of swinging under his chest to the right side of his body, and he's kind of darting forward from the air. And I just don't understand, in the frame on the left, the security guard's looking down at him. The frame on the right, security guard's looking up. This is terrible. This is something that in a good comics world, editors would be like, whoa, no. And they would teach kind of what I just did to the artist. Now, some of you might be listening, going, oh, Jesus, that's just nitpicking. Who cares? Well, that's fine. You may not care. There was times that I didn't care either. But once I started learning about it, and once I started understanding the craft more, it just became more and more obvious to me. And now I can't see it. Now it really matters to me. And so if you don't care, that's great, fine. I'm not trying to tell you have to care. But you're listening to this, this show, essentially. You care. You want to hear my thoughts. That's my thoughts. So Wolverine says, I'd ask what the hell is going on, but I know that stink anywhere. So at first I didn't understand what was happening. Again, because the visual storytelling isn't that well done. The illustration is attractive. It's got an aesthetic appeal. But if we look closely on the left here, what's happening is this mug is floating in air. And that's what Wolverine is talking about. I thought it was because he's charging this guy. It was a little confusing. But when you get to the next page, it's, oh, look, it's Quentin Quire. And apparently, I don't know Quentin Quire that well. Kid Omega, stupid name. He's an Omega level telepath. Okay. Because Grant Morrison, in all his infinite brilliance, decided Jean Grey and Professor X and the Cuckoos and Emma Frost and Psylocke and everything. It wasn't enough telepaths. We needed to make an Omega level telepath and make him a total asshole. I don't ever remember him being a telekinetic. I remember him being sort of like the delinquent teenage version of Charles Xavier. Now, if anyone has more extensive knowledge on X-Men, please correct me. Let me know if I'm wrong. I definitely want to be corrected if I'm wrong. I want to know what's right. But that's my understanding. But here, he's telekinetic. This is happening a lot lately in these books where they're getting power sets mixed up. And it bothers me because you need to be consistent. Things matter. You need to understand the characters you're writing. So he pours burning hot or scalding hot coffee on this guy's head, who's just an innocent security guard doing his job. And Wolverine says to him, "Sage sent you? Please, I don't follow orders. I don't entertain requests. I'm here because the professor finally realized what I've been preaching all along. Mutants are fucking superior. Or at least I am." Sorry for the F-bomb, but as you can see here, modern progressives love their swearing. They like to use the little symbols because it's really cool. Because they can't actually write the word. In my opinion, is like, look, if you can't put the word fuck in your comic, then don't say it with euphemisms. Don't say it with weird symbols. Just do like what they did back in the heydays and just have characters say like hell, mutants, or instead of here, mutants are effing. You could just say effing. You could say, well, that would be a euphemism. You know. Just say mutants are superior. Like, I don't know. It's just too forced. It's ticky tacky for me, but it bothers me. Quentin says, "Whoever did this to the professor might as well have done it to me. They're mine to punish." When did he care all of a sudden? Wolverine responds, "Appreciate the righteous anger, kid, but you should head back to whatever Krakoan preschool you escaped." I thought that was funny. Don't pretend competency, Grandpa Logan. I mean, honestly, what were you going to do? See if 1, 2, 3 worked as the passcode? Or maybe cigar or bourbon? How'd you know my passcode? And that part made me cringe. I was like, oh, really? Come on. Wolverine, you're not a dunce. Don't write Wolverine like a dunce. To which Quentin, with his little smug look satisfaction, because I can see inside your thick skull. And it's like a spent ashtray in a Depression-era hobo bar. Oh, okay. Oh. So they're going through now, and Quentin Quire's here to save the day. Shows up Wolverine, talks about how he's got the information, and he's like, oh, and while I was at it, I got on Amazon and maxed out your credit card. I don't have a credit card. You do now, along with a truly miserable cred score. Now follow me if you want to stab something. It's like, oh, look, insert joke. So meanwhile, Beast is trying to figure out how to get the Cerebro thing online because, again, they programmed it that no one has a plan for this. Jean Grey needs him to hurry, yada, yada, yada. So Wolverine is now working with Quentin. They're dressed up. Quentin uses his powers to... Well, actually, they're not dressed up. I got confused. They use his powers to take the guards, and he smashes them together with his telekinesis that I didn't know he had. And he's like, you're just upset because I keep showing you up. Because Wolverine told him to shut up. And he's like, I'm not going to shut up. And neither are they. They're going to scream and beg and pray and scream some more as they bow down before the gods of their future. At this point, I was really just desperately hoping the next frame was like snicked and Quentin's just dead. Wolverine's like, I've had enough of you. But they did kind of do the second best thing where Wolverine's like, I don't like the way you're talking. And I don't like the smell of this place. So they acknowledge to the reader that Wolverine is on our side. We don't like that Quentin's a degenerate asshole. And it's not okay with him. That was at least cool to recognize that Wolverine's not on board with this stupid mentality that all these pod people seem to have. And he recognizes they ain't printing books. They're printing bodies. An assassin factory. So we go back to the autopsy, and they see these body parts, and they're made as weapons. And they talk about, this hint's like, these guys aren't superhuman, but eventually the engineering is going to get good enough to where they are, which of course leads back to the House of X, Powers of X, where we saw the post-humans. And so Jean tries to get inside the one guy who's still alive and get inside his head. And they're like, what do you see? She's like, I don't know. And then we get this strange case of Phineas Hook. And this was kind of confusing. And they talk about this whole thing and this character Phineas Hook, and he had money, and he lived in Domino, blah-blah-blah. And Phineas Hook doesn't actually exist. And so they're like, there's this force out there. There's this, not a force, but, some sort of motivating factor, an identity, a person, something at work. And we don't know who it is. So someone's put these people into play. We don't know. And so here we see in the factory, Quentin's looking at one of these bodies that's just hanging here. Anyways, they're having a discussion. Wolverine says, you're pissed off about Chuck. I am too. But if he was here, he'd slap you inside your head for that kind of talk. I know what Magneto says, but we're not gods. And I was like, thank you, Wolverine. Gosh, put one voice of reason in all this. And then the body that Quentin was looking at sneaks up and grabs. And Wolverine continues his thought, and they ain't devils. Sorry, I got to hold in a burp here. And Wolverine's right into action. We're all just a bunch of complicated animals fighting for control of the same forest. Quentin's powers aren't working. My powers aren't working. Why the bleep aren't they working? Psychic shotgun, psychic shotgun. And he can't. He's like, look at him. Look at this. God, I hate this character so much. I just want Wolverine to put him out of his misery. Put him out of our misery. He's like, my powers, I can't. You got fists, you got feet, you got teeth. Animal instinct. Try it sometimes. Wolverine's just going to town against these bodies that have somehow been activated. It's a pretty cool scene. And Wolverine's like, you know what? If there's a psychic dampener in this place, it's more likely they're trying to hide someone. And I really appreciate that. Well, like I said, Wolverine's a smart cookie. He's been trained to do covert ops. He thinks he's wise. He puts two and two together, right? He's not a super scientist or anything, but he's got street smarts. He's got, street savvy. He's got common sense. And he's like, find her. And he stays behind to keep fighting these things. So Quentin goes into the next room, find Domino. And that's where she is. And that's the end reveal, to be continued. And so if he hadn't put together in the first issue that the invaders, the assassins that came to the island, they were wearing skin grafts of Domino's skin. They did mention that earlier in this book. I kind of skipped past it. So that was something that you could have picked up, and some of my peers, they read, in their reviews, they talked about that. I really appreciated how you could see that, you could infer that information from the first book, but they didn't spell it out for you. And now here they kind of are for those that didn't get it, because it's important that you understand that. So if you didn't put two and two together, which is fine, doesn't make you stupid or anything. Sometimes your mind is on other things. Here you get to, oh, okay, cool, that was what happened, and now you're not lost. And he does it the writer Ben Pierce. He does it in a nice way that's not just explaining it to you. So I like this. There's some ticky-tacky things that I complained about, as you heard through the piece, but overall, I like the art. I liked Wolverine being mostly Wolverine. The whole computer scene I thought was a little okay. I talked about that, but in today's world, in today's X-Men, where everything else is, some of these other books are such a joke. I did the New Mutants. Sorry for my phone to keep beeping. I did the New Mutants review, and oh my God, what a joke. Some of these books are just jokes, and you're just like, what is going on? It's kind of refreshing at least to see, hey, one book seems to be at least trying. So I'm glad that my deliberations in the comic store that I decided to walk away with this book. I'm going to continue. I'm going to get the next book. It's not a perfect book by any means, and wouldn't even say it's an excellent book. I'm gonna give this 3 stars, but understand that it's not 3 stars is a book, from my perspective, is a book that's doing what it's supposed to do. Not every book needs to be 5-star material. 3 stars is perfectly fine. The art is good, the writing is solid. It's not extraordinary, but it's fine. It's entertaining, and I'm happy if a story is what I want to see, and an ongoing series can't be home runs every time. Sometimes you just need base hits. That's a baseball reference for you, Eric Breen. I know you're just learning the sport, but we'll talk a little bit more. That's it. Some insider stuff between me and Breen, because we're like pals, sorta. He never talks to me, but he makes fun of me in the chat. So you probably can look down in the comments right now, and he already probably left some comment where he makes fun of me. Anyways, I'm yabbering at this point. I just made that word up. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you got something out of this. As always, leave comments below. Tell me how I could make these videos better for you or less excruciating. Or if you enjoy anything that I'm doing in the videos, let me know that too, to reinforce so I keep doing whatever it is that works for you. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Thank you for everyone that follows me on Twitter or is in the Discord. It's great meeting all these people. I keep meeting new people, and it's a blast. It makes all this worth it. And I'll see you next time. Take care.